So, hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I've invited Buyun Li with me to discuss his experience as a PhD candidate in Kelley School of Business of Indiana. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to being interviewed. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So let's get started. First of all, I'm really curious, what does it mean to be a PhD candidate?
During the entire course of PhD study, you get a qualifying exam, right? Before the qualifying exam, you're called the PhD student, right? After 2 years of coursework study, including the methodology in my field, it's methodologies in mathematics, in methodologies in empirical studies. Then you pass the qualifying exam, then you get your candidacy. Then afterwards, the candidacy, you will be working fully on your researches in order to build your dissertation and therefore to get a job in other universities and graduate afterwards. Yeah.
Mhm. And you mentioned that you are studying math, and I know that you're also studying operation research and
Mhm.
something about decision making. Is that correct? Could you elaborate a little more about that?
Yeah, of course, I would love to do that. So, in short sense, is like the main methodology I'm using are mostly from applied mathematics, right? So the application field then is in the business. That's why I'm in a business school. Okay? So operation research usually can be understood as extension of the applicational mathematics. So in essence, we're trying to use mathematical modeling to model the business operations of business entities and trying to model them as using mathematical models, solve them using mathematical methods, and then provide suggestions to the real world business. So it's a very tight connection between the theory of mathematics and the real world application of within the business and entities.
Mhm. So I'm assuming you have to look at it from a very mathematical point of view. Is that correct? Not just from an economics or business point of view.
That is usually true. Well, the short answer is yes and no, because economics is also a very important part of all business entities, right? But you are very true. Math is very important in my field of study. It is because so math is a very efficient way not only to communicate with people, right? So basically, describing a very complicated model usually takes a long time and is not precise, not concise. Therefore, we build math models, right? So math is very straightforward and very concise, so all the researcher within the field can understand. As I said, not only is a very effective tool for us to communicate, but also it's a very effective tool to convince people that what we're doing makes sense. Because math is rigorous, right? Because math is rigorous, so we can inject whenever we have a theory about something, about the business entities, right? For example, we believe that this hospital can be operates more efficiently, right? Then the way we're doing it is we have to prove it using math, right? In mathematically, we have to show the business entities that if they take our strategies, they would increase their profit by 30%. In some other projects, we would convince the government if they apply our strategies, they would increase the equities among the different communities within the same neighborhood. Okay, so in short summaries, the reason why math is very important in my field is because it's very precise and concise in communication. Also, we need some sort of foundation to prove our theory, and which is exactly what math helps us to achieve.
I see. Thanks for clarifying. And from what I
All right.
understand, a lot of your
Mhm.
research has to do with how to make a business run more efficiently. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the main goal for the past, I would say, past 40 years of history of my field. But recently, my field has moving into a bigger sense of efficiency. Okay, so not only we were pursuing the profit. Of course, the business entities usually wants the larger profit margins, but also now we're moving into the field of social goods and social fairness, social goods, right? For example, I myself is currently studying, having a project with my advisor about how do we run the healthcare system so that the healthcare within a fixed budget, how do we allocate the healthcare resources to different level of incomes of people, right? Because everybody's human life is equally regardless of their incomes. However, as a business entity, especially for private hospitals in the United States, pursuing the profit is also part of their goals, right? Then the goal for us is to find a equilibrium between the profit margins as well as the equities among the healthcare resource distributions.
Yes.
And yes, so far that's it. And there are broader themes. For example, a colleague of mine from my cohort is studying how do we make the donation system more efficiently. So people make donations. How do they use that donation money to more efficiently to achieve the goal of the charitable groups. Also, another colleague of mine studying how do the criminal justice system run so that they have more more justified and reasonable sentencing to different people who committed crime.
I see. This is just a side note. It's just out of my own personal curiosity. But when you're building these math models, I'm assuming you have to collect a lot of data, right? For these models to be applied to a business or, for example, a healthcare system or criminal justice system, what kind of data are you guys usually looking for?
Usually the short answer for that is like all data is useful and we would like to collect as much as possible. That's usually the case, right? However, sometimes it can be very hard to collect data. For example, in my case, the healthcare data is usually very precious. We usually collect those data through like collaboration with the hospitals. For example, my first year project is collaborating with one of the largest healthcare system in the Midwest region in the United States. The system has 18 hospitals, and the data we collect from them are the nurse staffing data and as well as the patient census data. That means like we have a data across spread out the time, and we know exactly how many patients are in which unit for what reason. But the tricky point for that is like we have to respect the privacy of not only the healthcare provider as well as the patients. Therefore, we had to go through a process called IRB. I'm not so sure about the full name for the acronym, but you can look it up. It's a very standard procedure for you to access the data. And for my friends in the criminal justice, they are looking at data from the police department. And for the people, for my other colleague who is working on donations, they are looking at public data on charitable organization. I think it's required by law that they disclose that how much money they receive, how much money they spend, and for what purpose they spend. It's usually in massive data set. It's like data set is massive in millions of rows, like hundreds of millions of rows. So cleaning data sometimes can be very tricky as well.
And you take all of that data and you make it into a model. Can I compare it to the way that machine learning or like ChatGPT creates models? Is that something that can be compared?
Well, yes. Go into a little. Do you mind if I go into a little bit details about what you just commented?
No, I don't mind, of course.
Okay. So whatever is the model that backs up ChatGPT are what we call the natural language programming, right? So basically, it takes natural language instead of like language in mathematics or language in coding. For example, Python, Java, C++, those are like coding languages, right? Instead of taking that language, the natural language programming models, such as ChatGPT, takes the natural language, such as English, Chinese, Arabic, all the languages that you take, right? And then it inputs like the natural language programming models the natural language as a model input to another model, what we call the real machine learning model, what we usually call the reinforcement learning. Right? Mm-hmm. Then reinforcement learning would generate a response. So the reinforcement learning is so you usually heard the word training the model, right? Training the machine learning, training the AI, right? What it does is basically updating the reward. So basically you give an input to reinforcement learning. The reinforcement learning would do something called explore or exploit, right? So explore all the options that can generate the response. And then it will find the best response to give it back to you, translating from the coding language into a natural language again. So basically, let me summarize. So in the ChatGPT, you first have a natural language transformed to a language that computer can understand. The model is called natural language programming. Then after receiving that coding language, the system will input it into what we call reinforcement learning. You generate a response in coding language. Then using natural language programming again, it will generate a natural language. That's what you saw at the ChatGPT. Okay. So when I say so my research involves all kinds of machine learning models, right? The machine learning models is what we call, for example, what we call the reinforcement learning in the middle of finding the best response, right? So my first year project, the project I mentioned that I'm collaborating with the Midwest healthcare system. The goal in that process, maybe we can talk it in more detail about the context of the project later, but we did use the reinforcement learning in solving that problem. Yeah, so machine learning is kind of really hot nowadays, and we use various ways to solve the problem, various models. For example, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and natural language and reinforcement learning to solve the problems.
So machine learning is actually integrated in how you do your research and how you make models for businesses.
Yes, it's more like a tool. It's more like a tool for us to find the solution.
Yes, okay, I got it now. So let's move on and talk a little bit about, just being a PhD candidate in general. I'm just curious, what kind of work goes into getting your PhD diploma or degree?
Yeah, there are several, I would say, several capstones or milestones along the way. So usually for the first year students, so okay, I'm gonna start from year zero. The reason why I call it year zero is because usually you get your offer somewhere in December or January, right? December or January, right? However, your semester only starts in the late August of that following year. So the year zero is from whenever you get your offer and you accepted your offer to whenever you first officially start your project. Right? That 8 months window usually is what we call year zero for PhD students. During that period, usually what you want to do is going to browse all the faculty members within your department and locate the faculties that has the same interest with you, or you simply just find the faculty that you want to work with. Right? Then you build a connection with your advisors, what the potential advisors. It has to be a two-way choices. You have to choose your advisors. At the same time, your advisor has to agree that they want to advise you. Okay? Then usually during that 8 month period, if you already have the methodology required to start a project, you will start a project right away. If not, your advisor will direct you to a series of rating lists or a series of courses you want to take. Figure out a studying plan before the program even starts. So you come to the program prepared. Then for year one and year two, in my program, and which is also usually the case in most of the PhD program in the operation management, operation decision science departments, it's like first year and second year, you are supposed to build 2 separate projects with faculties, with either the same pair of faculties or different pairs of faculties for your first year and second year projects. The projects are expected to be part of your dissertations, and usually the expectation is you have to publish those two projects somewhere down the way in your third, fourth, or fifth year of your PhD study. Right? At the same time, for the first year and second year students, you have to take courses, which is required, which is universally required across all PhD students, regardless of your research interest. For example, I'm interested in healthcare, I'm interested in probability theories, but also I'm taking courses in supply chain management and also taking courses in econometrics as well. It is because the department wants to hold a universal standard to all its doctoral graduates. Right? Then after 2 years, the first very important capstone comes, which is the qualifying exam, right? Which we usually call the call, right? It's a brutal process. You gotta sit down within the room. It's 10 written exams for all the methodology. Each exam takes 2.5 hours, which is 150 minutes. And at the end of the 10 written exams, you have 10 days by yourself to develop all on yourself without any outside helps. Develop a projects that you will probably be working on for your fourth and fifth year, which will usually serve as your job market paper, right? Then, as I mentioned, there's a job market period, right? Job market period usually start at 6th year, usually start at 5th year or 6th year PhD students. That is the place you develop a project that's not published but has potential to be published, and make presentations of it, and go around the universities for interviews, and also give the presentation of your job market paper. Then they will decide whether or not they're interested in your future researches, and decide whether or not they will give you a position in other universities. So 2 very important capstone is the first time you get 3 actually. The first time you get your offer, whenever you pass your qualifying exam, and whenever you enter the job market. That's usually the process of how to graduate as a PhD student.
I see. So obviously, I know obtaining a PhD degree will significantly help people in their careers, but it sounds like a very long and arduous journey. So what was the choice what made you pursue a PhD degree after you finish your master's?
That's a very interesting question. So my master's degree is also a research degree. So basically, instead of having a cohort of 40 people, my cohort only has two people, me and my roommates. So we're in the what we call Master of Science program. So each of us are doing research, are serving as research assistants to one of the professors, which serves the role of my advisor. Right. So basically, we started to do research during the master's degree, and after doing that research, I learned a lot of things. I learned linear algebra. I learned how to code in Python. I learned how to code in Java. I have all the tools to do the research. And back then, my choice was either to find a job in Silicon Valley, like coding job in Silicon Valley, or pursuing another job in PhD process, right? In PhDs, right? Then I just feels like PhD makes more sense because I have so many things I want to do research on. There are so many projects that I can do, and my advisor described a future of me doing a stream of research, and that makes sense than just going to Silicon Valley and get a regular job.
I see. So it came from genuine interest in the topics that you wanted to further research on.
Yes.
And what about your degree in operational research? What inspired you to take on this degree?
To be honest, the first time when I take this train of studying, it's kind of like profit motivated, because in the business school, the operation research, the graduates from the operation management or operation research field usually gets paid the most. At first, I was deciding to do this because it pays me well. Then after a while, after I really understand what operation research is really about, I feel like it's very interesting. So basically, operation research, there was a very ancient Chinese story about how to raise your horse. So basically, you have 3 horses, your opponent has 3 horses. All his horses are better than yours, but you can still win if you find appropriate strategy, right? That story kind of like motivates me, find like, okay, even if I have the worst resource in the world, by finding a great operational strategy, I can still achieve better than everything else. The process, the whole process, you see what the value of the operational strategies here. So basically what I think back then, what attracts me to this field of study is that it has great values, especially it has great values when your resources are constrained or your resources are limited, which usually is the case in the real world. Nobody has unlimited of resources, but there are so many things we need to do as a human being collectively. And what I find is this field of study actually adds the most value to the human activities. Therefore, back then I was like either too profit oriented or I was too ambitious. Now looking at what I'm thinking is like, it's very hard to do something for the entire human being, but it is possible to help one community or to help one decision maker to make a better, more efficient, more equitable, more fair decisions.
That's great to hear. Next question I have for you. So I know it's been a while since you've been in high school, even since you graduated high school, but I still like to ask you, what do you think all the way from high school to your undergraduate, to your master's, to now your PhD program, what do you think the journey for you was like going through all those steps?
I have a very colorful journey from my undergrad. So basically, I did 2 years of undergraduate study in Beijing International Studies University. Then I entered a overseas program in Queensland, Australia. So I went to University of Queensland to study in the School of Business, Economics, and Law. And then after that, I went to the United States. I studied in Cornell University in New York for the Master of Science, the research degree I mentioned in the business school. Then I come here to to Indiana University, Kelley School of Business. Right. So I've been to a lot of space, but the only thing I didn't change, and I think the only thing that's very valuable to support me to go through all the journey is that you gotta agree to the decision that you make. So basically, sometimes you have advices from sometimes other people make your decisions, right? For example, your parents, your advisors, and even your classmates, right? Sometimes they make decisions for you, right? So I think the most important thing to support me with the journey is like I always have this thinking in mind, like if I don't like the decisions, I will walk away. For whatever thing I do, I either make the decision myself or I agree with the decision 100%. So basically, no point to regret, no point to be going backwards and forward and backwards, all that drama. So just agree with the decision you make, and you won't feel regret, or you will feel supported all the way because you agree with the decision and you sincerely believe that the decision will lead to a better future.
I see. Well, that's a wonderful attitude to carry with throughout your life.
You have to have that, you have to have that kind of attitude. If you're doing a 6-year PhD program, it's really hard, and sometimes your confidence level is like a valley shape. Like at the beginning of your program, you feel really ambitious and confident. Then you feel like suddenly slowly going down until your first publication, until you first publish something. Then you believe, okay, yeah, my work is actually valuable. People believe that I'm doing sincere, genuine, valuable work. Then your confidence will slowly build up. Therefore, it's very important to have that confidence and positive attitude.
Yes, I'm sure. So just to end on positive note, I was wondering if you had to give a piece of advice to a high school student, what would it be? The best piece of advice you could give?
The biggest advice I can give is probably that I usually envisioning myself in making decision this. Have you ever imagined that if you have a time machine, how much better decision you will make, right? Like if you can travel 3 years back, even you can travel 1 day back, you can make better decisions, right? That is because you have all the information. You have more information. After 1 day, after time, you gain information and you gain experience in making decisions, right? So what I would usually do is I imagine myself. Imagine if I have to make a decision or I'm envisioning my future, instead of thinking of right now, I always envision that I am myself that 3 years into the future. I'm time traveling back to today. So how do I make my decisions? Right? So basically trying to make your decision more thinking into the future, right? Your decision not only affects your right now, but also affects your future. With that being said, to give you more concrete advice is that yes, the grades or activities, well, whatever you think is very important right now, may not actually matter in the future. What actually matters in the future is your thinking into the future, how you plan your future to develop. It is very important that you have a good plan rather than having a good grade. That's what I will always tell my students in teaching the undergraduate students, right? So it is very important here that you are on top of your plans rather than you did a good job in the past exams. So trying to consider, trying to have a plan for your future and stick your steps according to the plan, rather than just focusing on whatever is happening tomorrow. You want to look into like 2 years in the future, 3 years in the future. I know it's like sounds like very ambitious and very impractical, but thinking it's a practice. It's also a practice. You will have experience in the future on how to make better decisions for your future self. Okay, it will get better. You will have better grasps on how to make a practical and valuable plan.
Thank you for the advice, and that brings us to the end of the interview. Once again, thank you for agreeing to have this discussion with me. It was very insightful, and I got to hear a lot about your work and journey. So again, thank you.